2, 1. We are live, sir. Well, this is a closed, unlisted YouTube video. I see a bunch of folks on our moderators. I see Jay. I see Mark Gage. I see Kirsten. Well, this is a closed. There we go. Tracy's computer just blasted me. Tracy's right over there.
I think this is getting posted on the site. You posted on the site.
I did, yes.
And I think Jay was going to make sure it's in the forum.
I didn't actually yet link the first interview that we just did on our site. All I did is I put a picture there, but I said it's on the YouTube channel. As soon as we're done with this, I'll update that and I'll make the link on our site and all of that good stuff.
Make sure it's on the YouTube channel. I couldn't find it a second ago. Just make sure.
Oh, the first one? Well, I'm sure that's on the YouTube channel right now. I have no doubt.
Okay, good.
I'll
go look again later.
What's not there is the link to skyhub.org. So I will add that in as soon as we're done here and I get a moment. I'll go to the YouTube channel. I want that link in for your organization. You absolutely deserve it. And I just want to apologize. Like all of this time, like all that I could say is I was vaguely aware that you had this really cool idea for UFO detection, and I heard a lot about it. And all I kept thinking was, sounds good. Got to check it out when I get a chance. Sounds good when I get a chance. And I just never gave myself the chance. And I apologize to you here because I should have been on top of this much sooner, but that's why they say better late than never.
Look, I mean, it's clear. It's clear to me that you and Tracy are super busy, and I knew that eventually, if it went anywhere, you would catch up with it.
Absolutely.
I'm just like, I'm easygoing.
Busy sounds like a convenient excuse, although it is the actual reality.
And I can tell.
We're not the only busy people. Tracy and I are, a lot of the folks listening, the mods are, all of you guys are busy. I know. So you're super busy. I don't like to use that as an excuse, but it is true. And on any given day, Tracy had the best expression for it. It's like 500 knocks on the door every day.
Oh yeah.
It's like try to get work done when there's just all of these things competing for my attention, for her attention. And I know you and everyone watching this right now, we've all got it. You don't have to be a public figure in the field of UFOs to have 500 knocks on the door every day.
Oh my goodness! Going on that thing last weekend, I have 1,000 new Twitter followers.
Oh yeah, good deal, man. Actually,
why is that?
I wanted to talk about.
Why is that good?
Well, honestly, that's the thing. Like with Twitter, I guess I can just say, like I was active on my Twitter feed yesterday when I was temporarily on restricted mode. That's a whole other thing I'm trying to look into right now. But by and large, I think people realize I don't always manage all of my social media anymore. And for people who don't like that, all I can say is you have no idea, like that has got to be the reality for me, because otherwise I would lose my mind. It would not be possible for me to do anything if I were just glued to my Twitter feed or my Facebook feed, or even my YouTube comments all the time. Like I just can't do it. You have to push that out so you can do actually other things. But yesterday I was on my Twitter feed making a few tweets. Hey, anyway, can we talk a little bit about, I wanted to do a little bit of follow-up on your appearance on the panel when we did talk about the Wilson Davis notes, because for people who didn't watch, I think a lot of people have seen it now on my YouTube channel. I think I just saw it's like 17,000 views. Grant got like almost 10,000 views on his as well.
I believe it.
And for all I know,
it's going to have a big impact.
Yeah. So people are watching it, and I thought it was a very good discussion, but you had something quite significant to add. And for people who are watching this who may not have seen it, I think it would be really important for them to hear you say this one more time. Would you mind going over that?
I don't mind. So again, it has an aspect to it which is unsatisfying, and the unsatisfying aspect is that I lived in the intelligence community in a classified world for a long time, and a member of the intelligence community asked me for an opinion, and that conversation, location, etc., is classified. So it's going to be a little bit unsatisfying, but I'm going to tell you what it is. Okay, so all this Wilson stuff came up, when you blew it up all over the world with Rigney and whoever else was involved.
Right.
And I didn't really think about it. So again, I guess kept having this twinge in my mind that I had some memory of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the last 2 weeks, remember, I've moved into a new house. And so I'm slowly unpacking boxes. And I found this old day book. And in the day book was a notation. And in this day book that I found when I was unpacking my office, there was a notation of a meeting I had in late 2004 and or 2005, because the entry actually covered 2 dates, and I can't remember which one it was. So it was 2 days of a classified conference at a place I won't name. While I was at the classified conference, a friend of mine said, at the end of the day, please come find me in my office. So I went and found him in his office, and he handed me a piece of paper. And the piece of paper was signed by Thomas Wilson. And what he was doing was griping about not having access to these the details. He's never gotten over not having access. And from what I could read. So what the person wanted from me was my opinion on how he should act given this obvious request.
Who should act? The friend of yours?
A friend of mine, how he should act given this request. I says, well, now here's the important part. You got to remember. What
exactly was Wilson requesting?
Information about these programs. What did the guy tell him? Now,
and the request itself was,
I just want to make sure that everyone understands. I have zero firsthand information about these projects. I've never been read in. No one's ever told me anything about them. But it was clear that Wilson thought this person might know something.
I see.
Okay, and he wanted help. But look, this is late 2004 or early 2005. This is 3 years after the Eric Davis interview.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's long gone. He's not in the government anymore. He's in a private corporation at that time. I can't remember which one it is or what he's in now. Whatever it was then, I just don't even know. Okay, right. But what I'm telling you is here's what I told my friend. I says, this is fraught with peril. If it covers exactly what it says it is, and I don't want you to tell me anything about it, run as fast as you can. And never do what this guy's asking. I says, because he's trying to get inside on something no one would read him into while he was inside the government. And that was it.
The thing is, this is really interesting because this actually provides a nuance and context that I didn't really quite either get or appreciate before. So there's actually new information for me in hearing this from you. And am I right in assuming the letter from Wilson was essentially contemporary at the time? It was like a current letter. So he wrote it.
But I don't remember the date. And I'm just having an idea of the content and that it was definitely him. Look, I was in the intelligence community. I knew who the director of the DIA was at all the times I was in the intelligence community.
Right.
And so I knew it was a former director of the DIA. Now, often ex-directors of three-letter entities have lots of power. Their power can actually go up when they're no longer constrained by the organization they are a member of. And they go out in their corporation, and then they get congressional backing and other stuff for corporate activities, consulting activities, and so forth. And they use their years of friendships and acquaintances to try to do things for themselves and their companies.
It's exactly what Kit Green told me about a year ago in the interview I did with him, where he just said one of the most important things I think he said in that whole interview was, if you have government clearances while you were in the government, inevitably when you retire, those clearances get higher and better and more frequent. There's more of them when you go into private industry because that is where the action is.
Yeah. So I'm just telling you, I have not followed that path because I didn't want to. All right. So, but people may know that I started a company called Hawkeye 360. and
Mhm.
you can go to he360.com and look. And if you look at the board of advisors, you can see how this works. You'll see this board of advisors is full of luminaries from three-letter agencies in the Pentagon. You can see that the chief information officer for Hawkeye 360 was the IT and information officer for Donald Trump his first year in the White House. And if you go to the TTSA website, you can see a picture of some of the advisors. And this guy named Chris Herndon is standing right next to Chris Mellon in this list of advisors. So it's always a small world at the top end in the intelligence community. And you can see how this works. They go and join these companies that are up and coming, and they're trying to make money, have influence. They have a multitude of motivations for doing this. Some of them are they're honorable, and some of them just want to make money. It's all sorts of, because people are motivated by different things. But the people that are now supporting Hawkeye 360 are an amazing group of people. They've been directors of lots of things. And so anyway, so the point is that this is not uncommon. People leaving government, going off and getting a big job at a corporation and gaining access to things that they didn't gain access to before. And this is where it is really important to understand Wilson's mistake. He was in charge of an intelligence operation.
Yes.
These special access programs are development special access programs or research special access.
This is an important point you made before.
They don't have anything to do with intelligence.
Right.
It's a company trying to take something it has been given or something it has developed and turn it into a capability that the government can use in a classified way. So if they have a piece of a UFO, then they want to turn it into something interesting, they will do it in a corporation who will control it outside of the control system.
It's really weird. It's like a weird arcane type of stovepiping, which is something we talked about in the last interview. In other words, they'll say, no, this isn't intelligence, it's just R&D. It's like such a arcane, bizarre distinction. It's like a meaningless distinction when you really get down to it. I mean, because fundamentally, Wilson, as director of the DIA, or at least about to become director of the DIA at the time, it's actually not shocking to me that he would think, hey, wait a minute, this actually is an important thing, and I think that I should have jurisdiction over it. Legally, clearly that was not the case, but it's not hard to see why, at least morally, he might think that he would. And the distinction between intelligence and research and development, I mean, maybe you can appreciate that better than I could, having spent a lifetime in intelligence. To me, it just seems like splitting of the finest hairs.
Okay, so let me give you a slightly different perspective. Okay, so if a corporation is doing some development and they want the government to be able to use it, and they're doing it in secret, and there's classification around it.
Yes.
If the government could tell anyone, that would be letting that company's intellectual property go outside of its control and may be stolen by others. And the government entities that interact with them never want to be accused of aiding theft or aiding another company in competition with the one that's doing the actual work and owns the intellectual property. You got to remember, there's a lot of equities in all of this. This is an equity. It's an equity. It's power, it's information, it's money, it's all sorts of things. But they don't want their equity given away to someone else without compensation.
Yeah, their equity, which ultimately derives from something developed by aliens from some other place that they didn't invent to begin with. But hey, I'm going to share something with you. I had a conversation probably 15 years ago, around the time that I was shown the Davis notes originally, around 2006 or so. And I had a conversation with this particular scientist who shall remain nameless, and smart people might be able to figure it out, who said to me a couple of things in this one conversation, face to face. This was not email. He said, the whole idea of talking about disclosure of this phenomenon comes up every couple of years. Every so often, there are some people who have high-level discussions as to whether or not this is a good idea. And this man told me that he himself was on some kind of subcommittee to deal with legal implications of UFO disclosure, despite the fact that he's not a lawyer. However, he's a smart man, and he was on this committee. I don't know what authority this committee had, probably something very informal, but he said the reason we decided that we can't have disclosure, just from a legal point of view, was because of the lawsuits that inevitably would come about by defense contractors against the government for unfair business practices, for allowing their competitors to have access to this radical revolutionary technology.
Gave them an advantage.
Exactly. And he said,
let's suppose MIB is true. Let's suppose MIB is true and it's government. There would be never-ending legal cases and civil lawsuits against those who operated with, aided, and abetted the MIB. It'll just never end. So
that's just one. That's one.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Right.
That's just one thing. Okay, just imagine all of Melinda Leslie's Millab stories all of a sudden being proven true. She would be a multimillionairess if she lived long enough, just from all the crap that was done to her. Okay,
I agree.
So it's just awful. So
I agree.
It's never going to happen the way people want it to happen, because no president is ever going to pardon everybody involved. And Congress is not going to write a law that any president will sign that will indemnify everybody from civil action, because that's what it will take.
That's the thing, yes.
And then the Supreme Court might say, "Oh, you wrote this law? This law is crap. You cannot prevent people in a democracy from recovering because of their injury." I mean, you just realize this is just a can of worms.
It's a legal mess, because then
they're going to leak stuff out just to where they want to, and then stop and see how it goes.
Well, yeah. There's just no motivation for letting this out. But of course, as I've believed for a long time, those motivations are not necessarily the be all and end all of the conversation. Just because they don't want it to happen doesn't mean it won't happen one day. And then we're going to have this whole god awful mess foisted upon us, like it or not. But that's a whole other.
Well, I keep waiting for whatever it is to get excited and just all of a sudden show itself for whatever reason.
Well,
because literally, we don't know what their motivations are.
Our website is one of the best places for some of these conversations to take place, because there are some very, very smart people who do have some insights, or at least very interesting ideas about it. But yeah, right. We don't know with total certainty what those motivations are. Anyway, I'm glad you clarified your role on the whole Wilson element of it. So I just want to reiterate, you saw with your eyes a signed letter by Thomas Wilson circa 2004, 2005, in which he wanted this colleague of yours to follow up and provide him with the type of information he was looking at, relating presumably to black budget UFO R&D programs.
And my response was, run from this as fast as you can. Let me clarify even further, just for all the normal reasons.
Right.
I never talked to this guy about this again. I never heard what happened, and I hope he followed my advice, because I think because I think we're seeing now the complete unraveling of the story.
Oh, the Wilson story.
I think we're seeing the complete unraveling of it right now.
I don't really follow what a lot of the loud deniers, whether it's John Greenwald or Billy Cox, primarily, like, I just keep thinking at some point they're either going to have to do even more mental gymnastics than they are already doing, which is quite significant, to deny this, or it's just going to become a comical display. I mean, at a certain point, the information, it seems overwhelming to me already, and clearly I think probably to you and to a lot of other people, but not to them. And I don't even know why I am concerned that why do I care what they think? Frankly, are they that important? But it seems that when you have prominent voices that continue to fight this, that does give, that makes it difficult, and it makes it difficult for people who are on the fence to kind of jump in because they're afraid of getting involved in the fray. So I guess it matters, but it's true. There's much more information. I mean, Mergia on his site, UFO Joe, and Danny Silva, particularly, those two guys, along with Giuliano, are reporting a tremendous amount of new revelations that are coming out.
And Ian Doley's got some stuff. There's lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm in touch with all of those guys now. Giuliano and I'll do occasional email with, but I talk with James Iandoli. I'm interviewing Danny Silva. I'm making a point. I'm going to have Danny on Tuesday night for another live episode of the Richard Olin Show. And I'm actually going to be doing an interview with the mysterious Mr. X, who some people know who this man is, and others people want to know, but I know him. He did a fantastic 3-hour interview breakdown of the Wilson documents for Jay over Project Unity. Mm-hmm. And our goal is to do a bit more of a concise breakdown of those documents make it a little more accessible for people.
Yeah.
So all of that's happening. I'm doing bing, 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 a lot of these interviews right now.
Yeah, I just think it's very important when you have someone who is as dedicated to a topic and as adept at doing research as Mr. X, to use them like they want to be used.
Right.
This is not using them against his will. He wants to help. And I think it's incumbent upon those of us who can help to help. Absolutely.
He's quite extraordinary. And he wants to remain anonymous. That's his right, his prerogative, in my opinion. And I personally have no problem with it at all. To me, what matters is his analysis. And that's the important thing. So I've got all that lined up. But so, yeah, you've actually did the main thing I wanted to do with you actually did, which is talk about your take on the Wilson thing. Can I ask you one other thing, though, is what you think the fate of the Rubio bill is going to be? We talked a little bit about this at the end of our first interview.
Okay, so
you seem skeptical that it'll go anywhere.
Okay, so Rubio's part of the bill, which is being crafted in the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, has to be accepted and voted into the bill by the entire Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, made of a mixture of reasonably informed and calm Democrats and Republicans, all of them with major security clearances.
It sounds like they will do that. I mean, Brian Bender over at Politico did a tweet where he seemed to indicate that wouldn't be a big hurdle.
Okay, so there's that. Then from there, normally things go to the Senate floor from the Intelligence Committee, and it's pro forma. And so the Senate quickly, quietly passes it by unanimous voice, a voice vote, if there's no objection and an insistent on a count. Like Paul Rand might stick his hand up and say, I object, we've got to count everybody. And that might foil it completely. All right, so that's that. But in the House, we have to assume that negotiations are going on between the House Committee on Intelligence, House Select Committee on Intelligence, and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, and they are agreed overall how to go forward. So one goes into the House and passes, one goes into the Senate and passes, and if there's an ounce of disagreement, it doesn't go to the president. It goes to a conference committee, and the conference committee, made up of people from the Senate and the House, agree on the modifications to the bill to make them the same. Then they go back into each chamber. They're voted on again. If they're voted on again, now it's a passed bill. It's not yet law. It has to go to Trump, who is really distracted, and we'll have to hope that he signs it if this is in there.
Well, here's the thing, though. We're not talking simply about the UAP part of this bill. You're talking about the entire bill.
So we just have to hope that this is a piece of an extremely important bill, and he will just sign it.
I mean, I would think that's probably going to happen. How often is it that a president doesn't sign a Senate an intelligence appropriations bill? I mean, it's like they're part of their annual budget, and this
So
is something that got tacked onto it, right?
There were a lot of arguments when W was president about the Patriot Act.
Yes.
And it's trying to make modifications by hiding it into the defense appropriation, by the Senate appropriation, the Senate rules, etc. And just there's lots of things went on. So it can get bad. I'm just hoping like everybody's distracted and it flies through.
Right. Well, so it sounds like, I mean, there's a reasonable chance that this bill will get signed. Like it'll actually happen. And if it does happen, I mean, guaranteed there's a lot of poison in that bill. I'm sure there's a lot of bad things going on that are going to get shoved right in there. But the part that interests those of us in the UFO field is this UAP part of it, which honestly to me sounds quite interesting. And I don't really know how much hope I want to put into it, frankly, because I mean, it sounds really good. And it, as I was saying to you in the first interview, it sounds like it's right out of the head of Christopher Mellon in a lot of ways. And
it is indeed. On the other side, I just want to tell you, just because Donald Trump screams about deep state doesn't mean there's not a deep state.
Oh, okay. There is.
Okay.
No doubt about
there will be people who are in one of these stovepipes that completely oppose it, and they're going to drag their feet bureaucratically in every way they can. They're going to wind up having to have a direct order from the president to make it happen.
And opposing the UAP part of it, because
yes,
that actually does go. And you were hinting at this or talking a little bit about it in the last interview. Basically, your idea, and I just would like you to expand on this, is that this will force a lot of agencies to share data that they don't want to share. Is that essentially it?
Right now, the stovepipes won't share data with anyone because they don't want other people to know how their thing works, and they want to control the data so they get credit for disseminating it.
Yeah, because what this involves is essentially using all of these assets that are in orbit, satellites and so forth, and other data sensory systems to combine all that information to track UAP.
We have an exquisite system. Let me give you a different one that you haven't thought about. And we know that the Navy cares a lot about not only UAPs, but USOs.
Right.
We have a collection of microphones around the world that are unreal.
Mm-hmm.
And we can find nearly anything that's moving in the ocean. And so that data fused with, hey, did we see something coming from outer space? And hey, it went into the Atlantic Ocean. Where did it go? Well, maybe with those microphones, you taking what we saw with the telescopes, and now we hook up the microphones and we might see it. And there are other things that we use to detect nuclear weapon emissions or control of control signals to submarine operators.
Yes.
All of these systems are incredible, but none of them are fused into one data product. So if all of them were asked under the right framework of software, etc., to fuse all that data together, we might actually learn something incredible about these UAPs.
Oh, but yeah, to give up that amount of power, that information that you've got.
Oh, it's going to be rough. The Air Force hates the Navy, and the Navy hates the Marines, and everybody hates the submariners. And so, but this is going to be a big fight. It'll be a while before it gets anywhere.
Do you think it will get anywhere? Do you think this actually...
I believe it might pass. I don't know how it will be operationalized. And
that's the thing, right?
We're likely to have a different president in January because Biden at least has a chance. And so let's suppose he comes in and he's completely opposed to it.
Sure. Entirely possible.
He may just say, stand down, and that's it.
Entirely possible. So, wow, interesting. All right, look, I'd like to keep going, but I think...
Can we have a couple questions?
Tracy's asking for some questions.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Oh, all right. So Kirsten says that folks were asking if SkyHub technology was going to be able to detect interdimensional UAP at any point.
Okay,
SkyHub. Did you hear that?
I did. So part of the reason for SkyHub is to look for any kind of emanation. Now, given what I observed at Chris Bledsoe's, if I had to say what was happening, whatever these things are, they were coming in and out of wormholes or portholes or portals or something from somewhere else. It might be another dimension. It might be another galaxy. I don't know what it is. But what I'm telling you is they have emanations that we want to study. And if we can find the right kind of radiation in these emanations from these things that are popping off like flash bulbs, then we can say, ooh, they're generating some serious energy. And they might even be poking a hole in space-time and with coming through a wormhole or coming through a portal or coming through whatever. But again, you got to have lots and lots and lots of data so you can make a scientific hypothesis that you can then test with more and more and more data. It's just going to be a while.
It seems reasonable that you could, I don't know about detecting interdimensional travel, but you could at least observe effects that could be interpreted as interdimensional.
You're already seeing it. Every time someone sees one of these things pop into existence or pop out of existence,
exactly,
that is an indication of some kind of instantaneous travel.
Right.
And we don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it. So I want to gather data.
Any other questions you got over there, Tracy?
We do. Let me just see.
I'm looking at our chat over here.
There. You guys can both look at it because we only have there's like about 8 of us, so you guys can both look. It's not moving. You can just.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm enjoying this, but
the latest question from Worsley: how are they stopping the interference to stabilize the wormhole? I wonder.
How are they stopping the interference to stabilize the wormhole?
That's almost the right question, but let me phrase it correctly. How are they stabilizing the wormhole?
Okay.
There's quantum fluctuations and all sorts of other things that want to destabilize the wormhole. So here's how you do it.
Do we even know that there are real wormholes? I mean, that's something that was hypothesized.
So we have now the written down equations of how to make a stable traversable wormhole coming out of the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton. Okay, here's how you do it.
Yeah.
You take photons and you entangle them. You open your wormhole, and before it collapses, you send one of the entangled photons to the other end of the wormhole, and poof, it becomes stable.
Was this in the paper by Eric Davis on the
possibly
title of Traversable Wormholes?
Possibly, but it's possible because what both Davis and Puthoff do a lot is curate other people's research into a product that applies to our interest.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're actually moving a little more toward applied physics and even closer to engineering than a lot of these theoretical results. But what they're doing is synthesizing all of these other results into a product that says we might be able to do this for real.
So say this again. So to stabilize the wormhole, you're taking 2 entangled
particles, and they stay entangled even if they're separated by infinity. And you put one of them through the wormhole, it stabilizes the wormhole.
How the hell do you do that? How does someone do that?
Well, you have to open the wormhole first. So if you open the wormhole, you can stabilize it with entangled particles.
Okay. Fascinating.
And Leonard Susskind and a bunch of other really smart people have worked all of this out.
Unbelievable. Incredible. This is just more, I want to hear the question. I just want to say, this is why the UFO subject is so amazing to me, because it touches upon so many leading edge issues in so many areas of science and our world. And this is just one of them. And I've always felt any subject that can intersect with so many important new sciences has got to be of profound significance. And that's what this subject really is.
It's another one of these things where you have to be a truly multidisciplinary person to get all the way through most of it. So the other thing The other thing that quantum enables, so lots of people want to communicate with entangled particles faster than light across the universe, and the way they're envisioning it can't happen. And that's because even though I influence this photon or particle, electron or whatever, and it influences the one across the universe, I can't take my own information and impose it on this particle and have it work on the other one. So I can't transfer information.
Right.
However, there has now been a paper that shows how to take quantum entangled particles and use them in a way that allows information to be transferred
Serious?
faster than light. It's called the quantum Ansible. Is after Ursula K. Le Guin's faster than light communication device in the left hand of darkness. They call it the quantum Ansible, and there's a paper on archive.org.
Is this brand new? Because even
It's not new. It's not new. It's a few years old, but it's there, and it is really interesting.
One of those big think videos that Michio Kaku did. He talks a bit about quantum entanglement, and he was very explicit, saying, "But yeah, you can't do it with information. There's no information that gets through faster than light." But now,
let me give you just the quickest thought. If I have an entangled set of dice, and I move one across the universe, and I roll the dice over here, I don't know which face the dice is going to come up on, but once it lands and I see a face, the dice across the universe has the same face. Okay, that's what entanglement is. I can't tell you what face is going to come up.
Right.
But once I know what face is up, the die at the other end of the universe is the same face.
It's like the same spin, same whatever property.
And even that is probabilistic. They're highly correlated, even though they're across the universe. And that freezing of that one over there by doing something over here is instantaneous. It's faster than light. Now, you can't prove it without moving stuff back under the speed of light. So it still takes forever to figure out if it worked.
It's really extraordinary when you think about, how medieval theologians would conceive of what God is. And then you go through the whole scientific revolution where they essentially dethrone God. And with Newton, you don't need God. It's just the laws of physics. But when you really get into some of the most advanced concepts dealing with entanglement and beyond, how do you not think of something like God? And it just completely expands whatever the concept of God happens to be.
Hard to imagine there not being a massive consciousness behind all of this.
Yeah.
Hard
Tracy
to
tell me
imagine
something.
any other way. Yes,
I'm with you.
Which brings me to two questions. So,
Okay.
Not too high up, you got Sherry and Brian. So Sherry says, do you think you saw a lot of orbs and things with Chris Bledsoe because of Chris Bledsoe? Mm-hmm. And then Brian says, why is there some data linking orbs to particular observers? Example, the images are captured by one observer, but not another standing right next to them. Any thoughts, Bob?
Okay, so all I can tell you is exactly what my experience was. Chris and I were standing out in his yard, and we each saw a gigantic flare. And this flare, after it calmed down a little bit, was way brighter than Venus. And it moved silently over our head and did weird maneuvers. And I'm going to say it's less than 1,000 feet up, but let's call it a mile. But it doesn't matter whether it was 1,000 feet or a mile. It did things that I do not know the physics that would enable what it did. Okay. Then it dwindled off, got really bright, and disappeared. And I went, whoa, that was weird.
Yeah, how does that happen?
So then Ryan came, Chris's son came out and said, did you see something? Yeah, we saw one. He says, boy, I really would like to see one. I says, yeah, I'd love for you to see one too. And boom, great big flare orb, 40 feet across, came up at about the same place and moved around. And Ryan, after all those people had visited Chris for years, had his first visual sighting ever in my presence. That kid was so unbelievably impacted. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Not to mention me, because remember me, I'm the hard data scientist from the intelligence community, and all of a sudden I know everything that Chris Bledsoe has said is real because I'm seeing it with my own eyes.
Right.
I do think that it's related to Chris somehow. I personally do.
Yeah, well, of course it is.
I mean, like I don't know if he's causing it or
he impacts a large number of people that visit him have further experiences after they leave him. That he even calls it a name, or others have told him a name, and it's called the hitchhiker. So I had a hitchhiker, followed me home. So anyway, it's one of these deals. So
I think it is Chris. Like there's, I mean, things about him that I don't know if he's shared publicly, so I will not. But
well, I think he is. He and Ryan are telling people now that it's on demand every night. They go out, they look, and things happen. And it's dozens of the things I saw every night, every single night of the year.
There's something about him. Well, first of all, like a lot of people who've had really intense experiences, whether spiritual or UFO, he had his own near-death experience as a kid. Where
Yes.
he was shot and nearly died.
In the back and the left shoulder blade in the back by a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know how he lived, but he did go to the other side and then come back.
And I've strongly suspected that there's something to that. You know, before Whitley Strieber's wife was named Anne, and she's no longer alive, unfortunately. But I knew Anne Strieber, and one of the interesting things about it, she had her own research going on. I mean, she was someone who collected all of the thousands of letters that Whitley got after he wrote Communion, and these are like letters through the mail back in those days, and there were thousands of them. And she went through all of them, and she got into a deep study of UFOs and the phenomenon of death. And I never really knew her full research where she went with it, but I will say she was convinced that there was a deep and strong connection somehow to our mortality, going to the other side, and this phenomenon. So there's that. And then, the whole thing, my friend and colleague, Mike Clelland, who wrote The Messengers and Stories from the Messengers, that also, like where Mike goes in with his bizarre stories of synchronicity, talking about UFO sightings, owls, but there are many of those stories that are connected with death, the death of a person. And it's too much to go into here, but he describes these in a really good way. And it really opened my mind to the possibilities of what this phenomenon really means. And I mean, I believe that there's an extraterrestrial element to it, but there are parts of this that I have to confess, like even now after all these years, really elude me. And I think that there's something bigger here.
Okay, so I've had what I consider to be a blessed life for all sorts of reasons. But I'll give you one more blessing that I received in my life.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked in Princeton through a mutual friend, I got to meet and befriend and hang around for 15 years John Archibald Wheeler. And John Wheeler was Richard Feynman's advisor, Kip Thorne's advisor. He was truly important to 20th century physics.
He was the man who really ran the latest version of the double slit experiment, wasn't he? I mean, he did a lot of things.
I'm getting there right now.
Okay, good.
His graduate student also was Benjamin Schumacher, extremely important to quantum computing, and he invented qubits. And another student of Wheeler's was the guy that invented the multiverse. Archibald was one of the most influential advising faculty in the entirety of the history of physics because of all of his students.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So here's what Wheeler proposed, and now it's been verified many times. Let's take the two-slit experiment, where I'm going boom, boom, boom with photons or electrons or whatever, and they're a slow enough rate that I can figure out approximately when they go through the slit, and that I know that they're only going through them one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have sensors on the other side that will tell me where they land. So if you're not observing these things going through the slit, you get an interference pattern on the detector wall.
As if they're waves, right?
They're waves. The minute you look, either by your eyeball or by a piece of equipment, the waves go away and you get two lines of particles.
Unreal.
Okay, now, that is the old two-slit experiment, the one that upset the world and gave us quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
But Wheeler, he had an unbelievable imagination. He says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to shoot the ping pong balls, the bullets at the slits, and we're not going to look. We're going to let them go all the way through the slits and get almost to the wall, and then we're going to look. And when you look all the way backward in time, you can tell which slit it went through, but you hadn't looked yet. It erases everything backward in time from the time the thing was fired. And now the interference pattern disappears and you get two lines. Even though you let it go through the slits unobserved, the minute you observed it, it erased all those histories except for one, all the way back in time. Wheeler was brilliant, so brilliant. And it's just this big deal.
We don't have a way to understand that, do we? There's really not a theory that can explain that.
Except I believe that consciousness is at least partly involved in this.
It must be.
It has to be. And we are getting finally a mathematical, describable theory of conscious agents and consciousness interaction. And the nice thing about this is these theories are testable by experiment. And so Hoffman,
yes,
who is out in California, is the person who's put forward this with a ton of people that work with him. And I believe that I'm going to spend the next 10 years of my life figuring out all that stuff and becoming a subject matter expert, because I believe, given both my friendship of years with Freeman Dyson and my friendship of years with John Archibald Wheeler, and the fact that I was taught quantum field theory by Leon Cooper, who explains superconductivity, that I've just had this blessed life. And I feel like it is incumbent upon me to take that knowledge and ability and try to help figure this out, even if I fail.
It's amazing.
One of those things that you got to do it, even if you're likely to fail.
I'm just so glad to be able to talk with someone of your absolutely brilliant caliber, Bob. It's an honor for me. I want to ask you one other question.
Sure.
About this,
yep,
which has to do with the physics of consciousness. It's something that I've just lately been wondering about. Do we really understand the physics of consciousness?
No, but the way it acts, the way it seems to act is completely familiar to us. So we don't understand it, but the way it acts is understandable. And that's because the universe is governed by quantum field theory.
So when you say the way it acts, are you meaning the way that consciousness can affect things?
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
And remote viewing and extrasensory perception and interaction with particles that are too far away to be seen or touched or observed. All of these things imply that consciousness is some kind of field.
Yeah.
Just like electromagnetism, just like gravitation, just like the strong force, just like the weak force. All of these things are fields, and its consciousness seems to behave exactly like a field. And so from that, you can try to write down mathematical equations that will govern the behavior, the dynamics of the consciousness field. And it doesn't mean that we have to get it right. It just means we need to test this theory by saying it predicts this and then go off and test it. And that's how science is done. And I'm hoping that things will happen along this line as we go forward. And I think Russell Targ and Puthoff were amazingly impactful on all of this back in the 70s at SRI.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, the
think so.
government believes on all that. It believes in every bit of it.
Well, sir, look, this was great. Honestly, I think we outdid the first interview, and that was pretty good. But we wanted to promote Sky Hub, so I'm glad we did that. But we went even farther here.
So just let me say this:
Tracy's trying to show me.
I'm extremely grateful for the people in the forum and the existence of the forum, because a person like me, I'm the constant explainer, professor, technical type. And it's not that I know more, it's that I'm trying to understand more. And I do that best by teaching and training and talking and arguing and so forth. And the forum is the perfect place to interact with smart people.
Look, we are lucky to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
So I want to read a question from Jay.
Yeah, sure.
Are there any data points where you would feel you would need to observe your security oaths and need to deal with data differently for Sky Hub in the interests of national security? That's from Jay.
I see no such thing happening. And the way the data will be gathered, I will have no ability to control it. So the data will be gathered in such a way that it will be outside of my control. And this is completely how you want it. If a scientist is going to take that data and do something with it, it doesn't want Bob McGuire's fingers on it. It wants to know that nobody's touched it until they look at it.
Okay, good. Wow. Well, people who are watching along, by the way, I'm glad to see a lot of our members are here. So you clearly have been using the link that I put up on the website. Glad for that. We are, I don't know if you're going to be part of this, Bob. You are invited, but we're going to do a moderator meeting.
Yeah, I think I should.
Probably in a short while. We're going to talk some business.
Kirsten will beat on me and tell me I can't have a drink tonight before I go to bed if I don't join.
So we're actually going to have an admin business meeting for a short while, and I'll look forward to that. Bob, I just want to thank you for doing this. This has been so wonderful.
Hey, Bob. Everyone saying, woohoo, Bob.
You're such a resource, not just for the UFO community, which you are, but for our community at our site. So lucky to have you for so many reasons. So,
well, I just want people to know in the site and the forum how grateful I am for them being there, because they're spending their money to get there. And I want to make sure that it's a place where they feel comfortable, where they can express their ideas, and we can argue about them in a safe
honestly
way.
This is something that Tracy and I wanted all along. This is our whole vision for the forum all along, and
it's there now.
I feel like now it's actually been realized.
It's actually there.
Yeah, this is really what we wanted all along. So, all right, well, Bob, look, let's just wrap this up now, and I'll see you privately along with some of the other moderators in a couple of minutes. And I want to thank everyone who's been watching and listening. This is a members only interview, and I'm glad, because honestly, when I do the private interviews like this, I don't know how it is with you, but I actually feel a lot more liberated, and I feel like I can be a little more free.
Well, there's always people observing. Even in this forum, there are people that you and I can't possibly know. But it's not just anybody coming in off the street looking and doing whatever they want to, and then trying to get your Twitter account closed.
Yeah, I feel a lot more free when I do these, and
yes, right.
I'm feeling like as we lurch forward into this crazy world where I just know, like, at some point someone's going to come after me. I can just feel it, and so. But when I'm here on our site alone, I feel a lot more safe and secure, and I actually prefer that.
Yep.
So anyway, thanks for being here. Everyone who's been here, thank you for hanging out here with us, and we'll catch you next time.
All right.
All right. Later. Thank you, everyone.